My ex used to handcuff us together while we slept with the key in a locked box. After I escaped, he got my new boyfriend fired by sending his classified military records to his boss and threatened his 10-year-old nephew. So I created a fake nurse named Sophie to catfish him and documented everything until he lost his mind and got himself arrested, breaking into a library looking for her. My ex used to handcuff us together when we went to sleep, and I don't mean that in the cute metaphorical he wants us together forever kind of way. I mean that in the literal key in a box I didn't know the code to kind of way. I only managed to escape when he decided to trust me enough to leave me in the house alone while he went to the corner store. I ran and never looked back. I always worried he'd track me down and unalive me, but that never happened. Until 2 years later when I found it in me to date again. The guy I was seeing had randomly ghosted me, and when I messaged him about it a month later for my own closure, he told me it's because my ex told him who I really am. My blood went cold. I instantly packed my things and moved. 6 months later, I was in another talking stage with a new guy, and after a few amazing dates, he also ghosted me. This time it was because my ex showed up to his workplace with pictures of his family and friendly advised him to stop talking to me. I went to the police about it, but they said that without further proof, there was no way to know if this was just a harmless joke taken seriously. I felt defeated, scared, and so I packed up and country. I met a guy named Tom there a year later. I hadn't heard of my ex, and since Tom was ex-military, I thought it would be okay. But I was wrong. 3 weeks after me and Tom got together, I hadn't even made a social media post about it, and my ex started visiting Tom's mother at her nursing home. She had dementia, and my ex would bring her flowers, telling her son was dating an intimacy worker who would give her son diseases. As if that wasn't bad enough, he got Tom fired by sending his classified military records to his employer with anonymous notes about Tom being unstable. We woke up to Tom's car windows smashed a few days later. The seats were covered in pictures of Tom's family members going about their daily lives. His 16-year-old sister at the grocery store, his 10-year-old nephew is leaving school. We of course went to the police, and they were about as useful as you'd expect. Without proof, we have no idea who did it. My blood boiled. And when my ex approached Tom's nephew after school, Tom broke. He told me he loved me but couldn't put his family in danger anymore. I left that night, not because he asked me to, but because I realized my ex would never stop. He'd already escalated to threatening children, and police were doing nothing about it. Someone was going to get hurt, and it's while staying in a cheap motel that night that I realized something. My ex's obsession was a weakness I could exploit, and so I disappeared completely. New phone, no social media. I let Jake think he'd won. For 2 months, I studied him from fake accounts. I'd never looked at them before because of PTSD, but this time I forced myself to, and I saw just how pathetic he was. Desperate for validation. An incel. No driver's license at 29. This was the slimy vermin I was letting control my life. Not anymore. That's why I created Sophie. You see, Sophie was everything Jake wanted. A nurse who did yoga and believed in traditional values. She lived one town over and had escaped an abusive ex. I built her profile carefully using edited pictures of myself. She looked like me, just ever so slightly more in shape, and that made Jake feral for her. Sophie liked one of Jake's gym photos, and within a day, he messaged her. I kept the conversations light but engaging. I made him work for every response. After 2 weeks, he asked her out. Sophie said yes, but admitted she was nervous about meeting someone online after her toxic ex. Of course, Jake immediately went into protector mode, telling Sophie to take all the time she needs. For 4 months, I strung him along. Sophie would agree to dates, then cancel last minute. Food poisoning, car trouble, emergency at the hospital. Each time, Jake grew more desperate. His messages went from clear and mannered to long, rambling voice notes about how the universe was keeping them apart, how she was special, how he'd wait forever. The day Sophie agreed to meet him and Pinky promised today she would, Jake took off work. He got a haircut, bought new clothes, posted about how today would change everything. I sent him to a coffee shop parking lot 2 hours away and had him wait. He sat there for 3 hours, sending increasingly frantic texts. Are you close? Did something happen? Please just let me know you're okay. I'll wait as long as it takes. Finally, Sophie sent, I'm sorry. I can't do this. It's not you. I'm just not ready. Please don't contact me again. Jake lost it. 17 calls in a row. Voice messages crying and begging. When Sophie didn't respond, he started threatening to end himself. Then came the rage. Messages calling her every name imaginable. Threats to find her, to make her pay. I screenshot everything and blocked him. He made a second account that night just to send me videos of himself in the bathroom holding sharp objects against himself. It was traumatizing, but deserved. However, there was one thing that stood out. His final video, he told Sophie he was coming to find her, that he'd found people before, and that it wouldn't be too hard to do it again. That video haunted me, but I knew I couldn't let fear paralyze me again. Jake had just admitted on camera that he'd tracked people down before. My hands trembled as I saved every screenshot, every voice message, every threat. This time would be different. This time I had evidence. I spent the next 3 days in that motel room, barely sleeping, constantly checking the parking lot through the blinds. Every car that pulled in made my heart race, but Jake didn't show up. Not yet. He was too busy flooding Sophie's blocked account with messages from new profiles, each more desperate than the last. On the 4th day, I made my move. I created a new account for Sophie's best friend, Catherine, and reached out to Jake. Catherine was worried about Sophie, hadn't heard from her since their coffee date plans. Jake latched onto this immediately, bombarding Catherine with questions. Where did Sophie live? What was her last name? Did she mention him? Catherine played dumb at first, then slowly revealed she was concerned too. Sophie had mentioned meeting someone online but had been secretive about it. Jake offered to help find her, insisting something terrible must have happened. Catherine agreed to meet him at a diner to discuss it. I watched from across the street as Jake showed up 30 minutes early, pacing outside, checking his phone obsessively. When Catherine didn't show, he waited 2 2 hours before finally leaving. The rage texts started immediately, this time directed at Catherine, accusing her of being in on some conspiracy. That's when I knew I had him. His paranoia was consuming him, making him sloppy. He was posting publicly about Sophie now, sharing her photos, asking if anyone had seen her. His friends were starting to comment, concerned about his behavior. One even suggested he should talk to someone professional. I documented everything meticulously. Every post, every comment, every increasingly unhinged theory he shared about Sophie being a catfish or worse. His gym check-ins became erratic. His work posts disappeared entirely. He was unraveling. 2 weeks into this, something unexpected happened. Tom called me. He'd been thinking about everything that happened, he explained. His family was safe now, moved to a new area. His sister was in college out of state. His nephew's family had relocated for his dad's job. And Tom? He'd been doing his own research on Jake. Tom had found something interesting. Jake's pattern went back years. There were old social media posts from other women, similar stories of harassment and stalking. Most had gone private or deleted their accounts, but Tom had screenshots. Jake had done this at least 4 times before me. We spent hours on the phone comparing notes. Tom had used his military connections to dig deeper, finding forum posts where Jake bragged about his techniques for finding people. He'd even written a guide on a pickup artist forum about how to track down women who ghosted you. The level of detail was disturbing, but it also gave us an advantage. We knew his playbook now. Tom suggested we work together. He'd already started building a case file, organizing everything chronologically. He'd even found Jake's work information and discovered he'd been calling in sick frequently since Sophie disappeared. His coworkers were noticing. His boss was asking questions. I hesitated at first. Getting Tom involved again felt dangerous, but he assured me his family was safe now, and he wanted to help end this once and for all. Not through violence or legal channels that had already failed us, but through something more effective: complete exposure. We spent the next week planning carefully. Tom reached out to some of the other women Jake had stalked, the ones he'd found traces of online. 2 agreed to share their stories anonymously. One had police reports from years ago. Another had saved threatening voicemails that sounded eerily similar to the ones he'd left Sophie. Meanwhile, I kept Jake spiraling. Sophie's social media disappeared completely, but Catherine kept popping up in places Jake frequented online, always just out of reach. She'd like one of his posts, then vanish. Comment on a mutual friend's photo, then delete it. Just enough to keep him searching, keep him posting publicly about his theories. Jake started showing up at hospitals in neighboring towns, asking about a nurse named Sophie. Security cameras caught him loitering in parking lots. One hospital even filed a complaint when he tried to access employee directories. He was creating a paper trail of his own obsession. Tom and I worked in shifts, making sure one of us was always monitoring Jake's online activity. We used VPNs, fake accounts, careful digital hygiene. Tom's military training proved invaluable for operational security. We weren't just documenting anymore, we were building something bigger. The breakthrough came when Jake posted a rambling video on his main account. He looked disheveled, exhausted, manic. He talked about Sophie, about me, about how women were all connected in some conspiracy against him. He mentioned specific details about stalking me, about showing up at Tom's work, about threatening children. All of it recorded, public, undeniable. His friends' comments shifted from concern to alarm. Several unfriended him. His gym banned him after he had a breakdown in the locker room, screaming about Sophie to anyone who would listen. His carefully constructed image was crumbling, but Jake wasn't done. In his desperation, he made a critical mistake. He posted Sophie's photos on a reverse image search forum, offering money for information about her real identity. He included details about how he'd tracked down other women before, specific techniques he'd used. He was essentially confessing to serial stalking in a public forum. Tom screenshot everything before it could be deleted. We had him dead to rights now, but we needed to be strategic about how to use it. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection, not just for me, but for every woman Jake might target in the future. That's when Nathan reached out to us. He was a friend of one of Jake's former victims, a guy who worked in IT and had been following Jake's online meltdown. He offered to help us compile everything into a comprehensive file, not for the police, who had already proven useless, but for something more effective. Nathan suggested we create a warning system, a documented archive of Jake's behavior that could be shared with women he might target. It would include his photos, his techniques, his patterns, everything a potential victim would need to recognize and avoid him. It wasn't illegal. Not gonna lie, seeing Catherine stand Jake up at that diner really shows how brave she's being to be able to help protect other women from him. We all need a Nathan in our lives. It wasn't harassment, it was just information, freely shared. We spent days organizing years of evidence. Tom handled the technical side, ensuring everything was properly archived and backed up. Nathan built a simple website that could be easily found by searching Jake's name. I wrote the warnings, keeping them factual, documented, indisputable. The site included Jake's own words, his own posts, his own admissions, screenshots of him describing how he found addresses, how he gathered information on families, how he approached victims' loved ones. It was all there in his own digital footprint, but we weren't ready to launch yet. We needed one more thing. Jake had to know that Sophie was never real, that he'd been played, not through a message or a reveal, but through his own deduction. It would eat at him more that way, destroy the fantasy he'd built around her. So I planted breadcrumbs. Catherine mentioned Sophie's ex in a comment, describing him in terms that sounded suspiciously like Jake. Sophie's old posts, cached on archive sites, started showing inconsistencies, photos that didn't quite match up, details that contradicted each other, just enough for someone obsessively searching to notice. Jake found them, of course. His posts became frantic, theories about Sophie being fake, about being targeted, about a conspiracy against him. But who would believe him now? He'd already destroyed his credibility with weeks of public meltdowns. His friends were gone. His job was in jeopardy. His reputation was in ruins. The beautiful irony was that Jake was right. Sophie was fake. He had been targeted. There was a conspiracy against him, but no one would ever believe the boy who cried wolf. Not after everything he'd posted. He'd trapped himself in his own web of obsession. Tom and I watched as Jake's online presence exploded, then imploded. He deleted accounts, created new ones, posted increasingly unhinged rants about being set up. Each new post just added to our archive. Each breakdown further proved the warnings we'd compiled were necessary. 3 months after I'd created Sophie, Jake had effectively destroyed his own life. No violence needed. No legal intervention required. Just his own obsession turned against him. He'd lost his job after too many absences. His gym membership was revoked. His social circle had abandoned him. All because he couldn't let go of a woman who never existed. But we weren't done yet. The website was ready, but launching it was a big step. Once it was out there was no taking it back. Jake would know eventually that I was behind it. The question was whether I was ready for whatever came next. Tom assured me we'd prepared for every contingency. Nathan had set up the site to be virtually untraceable. The other victims had agreed to share their stories anonymously. We had contingency plans, backup documentation, safety protocols in place. Still, I hesitated. Part of me wondered if we were going too far. Then I remembered Tom's nephew, terrified after Jake approached him. I remembered the women before me who'd had to disappear from their own lives. I remembered the handcuffs, the isolation, the fear that had controlled me for so long. No, this ended now. The website went live at midnight. Within hours, Jake found it. His reaction exceeded every prediction we'd made. He created 17 different social media accounts in a single night, each one posting increasingly erratic messages about conspiracies and setups. He recorded videos of himself destroying his apartment, throwing furniture, punching walls until his knuckles bled. The neighbors called the police twice, but Jake managed to calm down enough to send them away both times. Tom monitored Jake's digital footprint while I watched from a safe house Nathan had arranged through a friend. The location was 2 states away, completely off any grid Jake might search. I spent those first days after the launch pacing the small apartment, checking and rechecking our security measures. Jake's attempts to discredit the website began immediately. He filed complaints with hosting services, claiming defamation and harassment. Each complaint was dismissed when the companies reviewed the evidence. Everything on the site came from Jake's own posts and admissions. He tried hiring a lawyer, but 3 different firms declined to take his case after reviewing the documentation. The real escalation began when Jake started reaching out to my old contacts. He found coworkers from jobs I'd held years ago, distant relatives I barely spoke to, even my high school teachers. His messages to them were carefully crafted at first, presenting himself as a concerned ex trying to help me through a mental health crisis. When that didn't work, he switched tactics. Jake created elaborate fake social media profiles, impersonating therapists and counselors who claimed I was their patient. These profiles would reach out to my acquaintances with concerns about my stability. Tom caught most of these attempts early, documenting each fake profile and adding them to our growing archive. One morning, I woke to find Jake had discovered something we'd missed, an old blog I'd written in college under a pseudonym. He'd somehow connected it to me through writing style analysis, spending what must have been hundreds of hours comparing posts. He published his findings on multiple forums, trying to paint me as manipulative and unstable based on creative writing pieces I'd done for classes. Nathan worked quickly to address this new development. He created counter-documentation showing the blog's context, class assignments, creative writing exercises, fiction clearly labeled as such. But Jake's obsession with the blog revealed something useful. He was spending 18 to 20 hours a day online, barely sleeping, living off energy drinks and fast food. The physical toll showed in every new video he posted. His appearance deteriorated rapidly. Weight loss, bloodshot eyes, trembling hands. His apartment, visible in the background of his rants, descended into chaos. Garbage piled up, dishes molded in the sink. He'd stopped going to the gym entirely, stopped maintaining any pretense of normal life. Tom identified Jake's next move before it happened. Based on his online searches and forum posts, Jake was trying to find where I might be hiding. He'd developed a theory that I must be staying with one of the other women who'd shared their stories on our website. His process of elimination was methodical but flawed. He assumed we were all connected in some grand conspiracy. We used this to our advantage. Nathan created false data trails suggesting connections between the anonymous contributors that didn't exist, fake social media interactions, doctored metadata on photos, breadcrumbs leading Jake in circles. He spent weeks chasing ghosts, convinced he was close to uncovering our network. During this time, Jake made contact with someone new, a woman named Melissa, who'd responded sympathetically to one of his posts about being catfished. She shared her own story of online deception, and Jake latched onto her immediately. Their conversations escalated quickly, with Jake pouring out his entire story to this understanding ear. Melissa was, of course, another creation. This time, Tom was running the profile. His military background included psychological operations training, and he used it to keep Jake talking. Through Melissa, we learned Jake had been planning something bigger. He'd been saving money, selling possessions, preparing for what he called his final move. The details emerged slowly. Jake believed I was hiding in one of 3 cities based on his flawed analysis. He planned to take a month off. He'd already burned through his vacation days and was preparing to quit his job and search for me systematically. His plan included visiting women's shelters, hospitals, yoga studios, anywhere he thought I might go. We couldn't let him terrorize innocent people in his search. Tom suggested we give Jake what he wanted, a trail to follow. But this trail would lead somewhere specific, somewhere we controlled. Nathan found the perfect location, a small town with limited internet connectivity, one main road in and out, and most importantly, a robust neighborhood watch program. The breadcrumbs were laid carefully. Catherine's account became active again, posting about visiting a friend in this specific town. Photos were uploaded with location location tags, then quickly deleted, but not before Jake's monitoring tools caught them. Sophie's old email received a password reset request from an IP address traced to the town's library. Jake took the bait completely. He posted about his upcoming investigation trip, warning his followers that he might be offline for a while. He sold his gaming computer, his television, anything valuable he owned to fund the journey. His final post before leaving showed a map with his planned route, complete with stops at women's shelters and hospitals along the way. We alerted each location anonymously about a potential stalker, including Jake's photo and behavior patterns. Most took the warnings seriously, especially after checking our website. Security was increased, staff were briefed. Jake would find no help in his harassment campaign. The journey itself became another form of self-destruction for Jake. He live-streamed portions of it, showing himself sleeping in his car to save money, eating nothing but gas station food, becoming increasingly disheveled and paranoid. He interpreted every setback as part of the conspiracy against him. When shelters refused to give out information, he accused them of hiding me. When hospital security asked him to leave, he saw it as proof he was close. Tom and I took turns monitoring Jake's progress while Nathan maintained our security systems. We watched him spiral further with each failed lead. His followers dwindled as his posts became more unhinged. Even the most sympathetic commenters started suggesting he needed professional help. Jake reached the planted destination after 2 weeks on the road. The town was exactly as we'd hoped. Small enough that strangers were noticed immediately, connected enough that Jake's presence was reported within hours of arrival. He checked into the only motel, paying cash, immediately arousing suspicion with his questions about new residents and young women living alone. The Neighborhood Watch program, alerted by our anonymous tip, documented Jake's every move. He was seen photographing license plates at the local hospital, following women who vaguely matched my description, sitting outside the yoga studio for hours. The local police received multiple complaints but could only warn him about loitering. Jake's frustration mounted with each passing day. His money ran low. The motel manager, uncomfortable with his behavior, asked him to leave. He slept in his car in various parking lots, each time moved along by property owners or police. His live streams became desperate pleas for funding, for information, for anyone to believe his story about the conspiracy against him. That's when Jake made his biggest mistake yet. Desperate and running out of options, he broke into the town library after hours, convinced their computers would have information about local residents he couldn't access otherwise. The break-in was caught on multiple cameras. Jake was arrested immediately. Tom had anticipated this possibility. We'd prepared for various scenarios, but Jake's complete meltdown exceeded expectations. In custody, he ranted about Sophie, about me, about the conspiracy. He demanded police investigate the website, claimed he was being framed, insisted everything was connected to a massive plot against him. The police, already aware of Jake's stalking history from our website, treated his claims with appropriate skepticism. This dude Jake is just destroying his whole life piece by piece like this. He's selling everything he owns, quitting his job, sleeping in his car, and eating gas station food, all because he can't let go of this obsession. He's so lost in his paranoia that he thinks everyone trying to help him is part of some conspiracy. His public posts about planning to search for me, combined with the break-in, resulted in charges that would keep him occupied with legal troubles for months. No expensive lawyers would take his case after reviewing his online history. He was assigned a public defender who advised him to plead guilty and seek mental health treatment. But Jake couldn't accept defeat. Even from jail, using limited computer access meant for legal research, he continued posting. He created new narratives about being a political prisoner, about exposing a vast conspiracy. These posts were gold for our documentation, clear evidence of his continued obsession and refusal to take responsibility. Nathan suggested we prepare for Jake's eventual release. The charges wouldn't keep him locked up forever, and his obsession showed no signs of fading. We needed a more permanent solution, something that would protect not just me, but any woman Jake might target in the future. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of Jake's former victims, inspired by our website, had started her own support group for stalking survivors. She reached out through Nathan, proposing a collaboration. Together, we could create a network of resources, early warning systems, and support structures that would make it harder for stalkers like Jake to operate. The development process took weeks. Tom coordinated with cybersecurity experts to create better tracking tools. Nathan built platforms for secure communication between survivors. I wrote guidelines based on my experience, detailing the warning signs and escalation patterns we'd documented. The network grew organically, spreading through word of mouth and careful outreach. Jake, meanwhile, continued his downward spiral. His family, finally aware of the full extent of his behavior thanks to his very public meltdown, attempted an intervention. His mother visited him in jail, begging him to accept help. His brother offered to pay for therapy if Jake would just admit he needed it. Jake refused everything, insisting they were part of the conspiracy too. His jail time gave us breathing room to strengthen our defenses. Tom identified vulnerabilities in our security, holes Jake might exploit once free. Nathan upgraded our digital protections, creating multiple fallback plans. I focused on building my new life, finally able to exist without constantly looking over my shoulder. The support network launched quietly, spreading through survivor communities and women's safety groups. Within weeks, we had hundreds of members sharing experiences, warning signs, and protection strategies. 3 women recognized their own stalkers' patterns in our documentation and took preventive action before situations escalated. Jake discovered the network's existence through a contraband phone another inmate smuggled to him. His rage was volcanic. He posted accusations of criminal conspiracy, demanded federal investigations, claimed the network was a terrorist organization targeting innocent men. Each post further damaged his credibility and added to our evidence files. Legal documents from Jake's case became public record. His arrest report, his rants to police, his courtroom outbursts, all painted painted a clear picture of an unstable individual consumed by obsession. Local news briefly covered the library break-in, using Jake's mugshot. His complete destruction of his own reputation was now documented in mainstream sources beyond just social media. Tom discovered Jake had been corresponding with other men in similar situations, trying to build his own network of victims of false accusations. But even in these communities, Jake's extreme behavior made him a pariah. His insistence on grand conspiracies and refusal to consider any personal responsibility alienated potential allies. As Jake's release date approached, we prepared for the inevitable extinction burst, the final, desperate escalation that often comes when an abuser realizes they've truly lost control. Tom arranged safe houses in multiple locations. Nathan created rapid response protocols. I underwent self-defense training, finally ready to face my fear head-on if necessary. The parole board, reviewing Jake's case, had access to our full documentation. His complete lack of remorse, continued obsession, and elaborate conspiracy theories worked against him. They mandated extensive mental health treatment as a condition of release, along with restrictions on internet access and a prohibition on contacting any of his victims. Jake agreed to the conditions because he had no choice, but we knew he wouldn't comply. His obsession had consumed everything: his job, his relationships, his freedom, his sanity. He was incapable of letting go, and that inability would be his ultimate downfall. Preparing for Jake's release required careful coordination. Our network had grown to include legal advocates, cybersecurity professionals, and mental health experts. We developed protocols for rapid response, evidence preservation, and victim protection. Every member understood their role in the larger system we'd built. The day before Jake's scheduled release, something unexpected happened. His cellmate, tired of months of conspiracy rants and middle-of-the-night ravings, contacted our network. He'd recorded hours of Jake's detailed plans for post-release stalking, including specific tactics to circumvent his parole restrictions. The recordings were devastating to any claim Jake might make of rehabilitation. We provided the recordings to Jake's parole officer through proper legal channels. The officer, already concerned about Jake's mental state, took immediate action. Jake's release was delayed pending psychological evaluation. The evaluation, conducted by court-appointed professionals, confirmed what we already knew. Jake posed a significant danger to others and himself. Instead of freedom, Jake found himself transferred to a secure mental health facility for extended treatment. The commitment wasn't punitive, but therapeutic, though Jake saw it as the ultimate proof of the conspiracy against him. His rage-filled posts from the facility, sent through other patients, only reinforced the necessity of his continued treatment. Our network used this time to expand and refine our resources. We created educational materials for law enforcement, helping them recognize and document stalking patterns. We developed technology tools to help victims secure their digital presence. We built partnerships with domestic violence organizations, expanding our reach and impact. The ripple effects were significant. 2 more of Jake's past victims came forward, adding their stories to our documentation. Law enforcement in multiple jurisdictions began using our resources for training. The website became a cautionary tale shared in online safety workshops and support groups. Jake's family, finally accepting the reality of his condition, began their own healing process. His mother joined a support group for families of stalkers, learning she wasn't alone in her confusion and guilt. His brother became an advocate for better mental health resources, channeling his frustration into positive action. From the facility, Jake continued his attempts to control the narrative. He wrote lengthy manifestos about his persecution, tried to submit articles to conspiracy websites, even attempted to file lawsuits from his hospital bed. Each effort failed, but he persisted, unable to break free from the obsession that had destroyed his life. Our focus shifted from defense to offense. We began reaching out proactively to potential victims, creating early warning systems based on the patterns we'd identified. The network developed predictive tools, helping women recognize dangerous behaviors before they escalated. What started as personal protection had evolved into systematic prevention. Tom transitioned into a full-time role coordinating network security. His military experience proved invaluable in creating robust protection protocols. Nathan expanded the technical infrastructure, building tools that could be deployed quickly when new threats emerged. I found my voice as an advocate, sharing our story to help others recognize the warning signs I'd missed. The transformation was profound. What Jake had meant to be my destruction became my purpose. Every woman who avoided a dangerous situation because of our resources was a victory. Every stalker who faced consequences because of our documentation was justice served. The network grew stronger with each success, building momentum Jake could never stop. 6 months into Jake's treatment, his doctors reported no progress. He remained fixated on the conspiracy narrative, unable to engage with therapy meaningfully. His commitment was extended indefinitely, with periodic reviews that consistently found him unfit for release. The system had finally recognized the danger he posed. Our network faced challenges too. Other stalkers, learning from Jake's mistakes, adapted their tactics. We had to evolve constantly, staying ahead of new threats. Some accused us of vigilantism, of ruining innocent men's lives. We responded with documentation, evidence, and the testimonies of women whose lives we'd saved. The legal landscape began shifting in our favor. Prosecutors started taking stalking cases more seriously, armed with better understanding of escalation patterns. Judges issued more protective orders, recognizing the danger of obsessive behavior. Police departments requested our training materials, wanting to better serve victims in their communities. Jake became a case study in forensic psychology programs. His complete documentation, from initial stalking through total self-destruction, provided unprecedented insight into obsessive behavior patterns. Researchers contacted us, wanting to understand how we'd managed to turn his tactics against him so effectively. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. everyone. Jake's obsession with control had resulted in his complete loss of it. His determination to possess me had led to his own imprisonment. His refusal to accept rejection had destroyed every aspect of his life. He'd become the architect of his own downfall, with us simply documenting the collapse. As the one-year anniversary of the website launch approached, we conducted a comprehensive review. The statistics were staggering. Over 10,000 women had accessed our resources. Dozens of stalkers had been identified and stopped before causing serious harm. Law enforcement partnerships had expanded to include federal agencies interested in our documentation methods. But the work was far from over. New cases emerged daily. Technology evolved, creating new avenues for harassment. Social media platforms struggled to balance free speech with user safety. We adapted continuously, building new tools and strategies to meet emerging threats. Jake's story served as both warning and inspiration. Warning to those who thought obsession was love, who believed persistence would overcome rejection. Inspiration to those trapped in similar situations, showing that escape was possible, that abusers could be stopped, that victims could reclaim their power. The network had become something larger than any of us had imagined. What started as personal survival had transformed into systematic change. We'd proven that victims didn't have to remain powerless, that documentation could defeat intimidation, that community could overcome isolation. The anniversary review meeting was scheduled for the following week when Jake's psychiatrist contacted our network directly. He'd been reviewing Jake's case files and noticed patterns that concerned him. Jake had stopped taking his medication 3 weeks ago, convincing other patients to hide pills for him. Jake secretly stopping his medication? That's such a dangerous sign after everything his family and doctors have tried to do to help him. Even after 6 months of treatment, he's still so trapped in his own conspiracy theories that he can't see how many people are trying to help him heal. His behavior had become increasingly erratic, and he'd been caught trying to access restricted areas of the facility multiple times. Tom immediately implemented our emergency protocols. Nathan traced recent digital activity from the facility's IP addresses and found Jake had been using a smuggled tablet to create new fake profiles. He'd been studying our network's public-facing materials, mapping out potential vulnerabilities. His obsession hadn't diminished during treatment. It had evolved. I relocated to our third safe house that month, this time in a busy metropolitan area where anonymity came easier. The building had multiple exits, security cameras, and neighbors who worked varying shifts. Tom coordinated with local contacts to establish observation routines without alerting anyone to my specific situation. Jake's escape attempt came on a Tuesday morning. He'd been planning it for weeks, befriending a maintenance worker who unknowingly provided access to service corridors. Security footage showed Jake walking calmly through the facility wearing stolen scrubs and a surgical mask. By the time staff noticed his absence, he had a 4-hour head start. Our network activated immediately. Members in surrounding areas received his photo and description. Local women's shelters were alerted. Nathan monitored online activity for any sign of Jake's digital footprint. Tom coordinated with his contacts to track possible routes Jake might take. The first sighting came from a gas station attendant who recognized Jake from our website. He'd tried to buy a prepaid phone with cash, looking disheveled and paranoid. The attendant pretended the system was down, and Jake left without making a purchase. We had confirmation he was heading east, likely toward my last known location from before the safe houses. I spent the next 48 hours in lockdown, monitoring updates through secure channels. Jake's pattern was predictable in its desperation. He visited libraries trying to access computers, but most required library cards he didn't have. He slept in a stolen car he'd found unlocked, moving it every few hours to avoid detection. Nathan discovered Jake had memorized several of our network members' usernames from public forums. He was trying to social engineer his way into private groups, posing as a concerned brother or father. Our verification protocols held firm. Every attempt was documented, reported, and blocked within minutes. On the 4th day, Jake made contact with one of his old online acquaintances, someone who'd initially supported him before seeing the evidence. This person, feeling guilty about their past enabling, immediately forwarded Jake's messages to our network. Jake was asking for money, claiming he needed it for legal fees to fight the conspiracy against him. Tom suggested using this connection to misdirect Jake. We crafted a careful response through the acquaintance, suggesting I might be working at a specific hospital 3 states away. The information was specific enough to be believable, but vague enough to waste Jake's time. He took the bait immediately. Jake's journey to the false location became another documented disaster. He was caught shoplifting food from a convenience store. The owner, checking Jake's ID against our website during the police report, added extra details about Jake's suspicious behavior. Jake was released with a warning, but now had another mark on his record. Our network members in the false destination city prepared carefully. They alerted local authorities about a potentially dangerous individual headed their way. Security at the hospital was briefed. Women matching my general description were warned to be extra cautious. Jake arrived exhausted and desperate. He spent 2 days stalking the hospital parking lot before security confronted him. His explanation about looking for his girlfriend who worked there fell apart when he couldn't provide basic details. They escorted him off the property with a formal trespassing warning. The unraveling accelerated from there. Jake's stolen car was reported, and he abandoned it in a restaurant parking lot. He tried hitchhiking, but his appearance and behavior made drivers wary. One truck driver who briefly gave him a ride later reported that Jake spent the entire time ranting about conspiracies and showing photos of Sophie on his phone. Nathan tracked Jake's digital footprint as he used public Wi-Fi to access our website obsessively. He was trying to find patterns in our member testimonials, convinced that hidden messages would reveal my location. He spent hours in a 24-hour diner, nursing single cups of coffee while frantically taking notes on napkins. Local police found Jake sleeping in a park, violating vagrancy ordinances. His identification triggered alerts from both his facility escape and our network warnings. This time, the accumulated evidence was overwhelming. Multiple jurisdictions wanted him for various violations. His parole violations alone guaranteed significant consequences. During his arrest, Jake insisted police check our website, claiming it would prove the conspiracy against him. The officers, having already reviewed our documented evidence, recognized his behavior patterns from our training materials. His demands to investigate me for crimes against humanity were noted in their reports as evidence of his continued delusions. Tom monitored the legal proceedings that followed. Jake's public defender tried to argue for mental health treatment over incarceration, but Jake sabotaged his own defense. He insisted on representing himself, filing motions about constitutional violations and demanding subpoenas for Sophie's medical records from every hospital in 3 states. The judge, reviewing Jake's extensive history, ordered a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. The court-appointed psychiatrists found Jake competent to stand trial, but suffering from severe personality disorders and obsessive fixation. Their report recommended long-term institutional treatment with strict supervision. Jake's family attended the hearings, finally seeing the full extent of his behavior laid out in court documents. His mother wept as evidence was presented. His brother sat stone-faced, recognizing patterns he'd dismissed for years. They provided statements supporting institutional treatment over prison. Our network used the high-profile nature of Jake's case to expand our educational efforts. We created anonymized case studies for law enforcement training. Nathan developed new digital tools to help identify escalating online behavior. Tom established protocols for coordinating multi-jurisdictional responses to stalking cases. The verdict came down 6 weeks after Jake's escape. Multiple charges resulted in a sentence that combined incarceration with mandatory psychiatric treatment. The judge specifically cited our documentation in her decision, noting how Jake's own words and actions had created an indisputable record of his dangerous behavior. Jake's reaction was predictable. He declared the court illegitimate, accused the judge of being part of the conspiracy, and had to be physically removed from the courtroom. His final statement, recorded in court transcripts, was a promise to expose the truth about Sophie and the network that destroyed his life. In the months that followed, Jake's story became a cautionary tale within our network. New members studied his patterns to recognize similar behaviors in their own situations. His complete self-destruction through obsession served as powerful evidence that documentation and community support could overcome even the most persistent stalkers. I gradually emerged from hiding, though always maintaining security consciousness. The safe house protocols remained in place, but I no longer lived in constant fear. Jake's institutionalization provided breathing room to rebuild a life he'd tried to destroy. Tom continued developing our security infrastructure, his military experience invaluable in creating systems that protected without paranoia. Nathan expanded our digital tools, making them accessible to women worldwide. The network grew organically, each new member strengthening our collective defense. Other survivors reached out with their stories, many inspired by how we'd turned Jake's tactics against him. We helped them document their experiences, create safety plans, and connect with local resources. Every success story reinforced that victims didn't have to remain powerless. Jake's attempts to control the narrative from prison failed completely. His letters to media outlets were recognized as the ravings of an obsessed stalker. His attempts to file lawsuits were dismissed. His manifestos were studied only by psychiatrists trying to understand his pathology. The ripple effects continued expanding. Police departments requested our training materials. Prosecutors consulted our documentation strategies. Judges referenced our resources in protective order hearings. The system that had failed me initially was slowly learning to recognize and respond to stalking behaviors. Our network faced new challenges as technology evolved. Stalkers adapted their tactics, requiring constant vigilance and innovation. We developed partnerships with tech companies to address digital harassment. We created resources for parents teaching children about healthy relationships. The transformation from victim to advocate felt surreal sometimes. What started as desperate self-defense had become a movement helping thousands of women. Jake's obsession with controlling me had ultimately given me purpose and community I never expected. As Jake served his sentence, periodic psychiatric reviews confirmed what we already knew. His obsession remained unchanged. He still believed Sophie was real, that I'd orchestrated an elaborate conspiracy against him. Treatment attempts failed because he couldn't accept the basic reality of his own actions. His family eventually stopped visiting, exhausted by years of enabling and denial. His mother joined our family support group, finding peace in helping other families recognize warning signs. His brother became an advocate for better mental health resources, channeling grief into positive action. The network established a scholarship fund for survivors pursuing education or career changes. We created mentorship programs pairing experienced survivors with those just beginning their journey. We developed resources for specific communities often overlooked by traditional support systems. Years passed, and Jake became a footnote in our larger mission. His case study appeared in textbooks and training manuals. His patterns helped identify and stop other stalkers before they could escalate. His complete downfall served as proof that documentation and community could defeat obsession. I built a life free from his shadow. The hypervigilance faded though never fully disappeared. I formed healthy relationships with people who understood my history. I pursued career opportunities without fear of sabotage. I existed publicly without constant terror. The network thrived beyond anything we'd imagined. Chapters formed internationally. Resources translated into dozens of languages. Partnerships expanded with organizations fighting domestic violence. What started as 3 people trying to stop one stalker had become a global movement. Jake's story ended not with violence or drama, but with irrelevance. His obsession consumed only himself. His attempts at control resulted in his own captivity. His refusal refusal to accept rejection destroyed his own life while his victims thrived. I sometimes received updates about Jake through official channels, psychiatric reports noting no improvement, parole hearings denied due to continued fixation, prison incidents where he accused guards of working for Sophie, a pathetic figure trapped in delusions of his own making. The anniversary meetings became celebrations of survival and growth, hundreds of women gathering to share stories of escape and recovery, Tom presenting new security innovations, Nathan demonstrating digital protection tools, me speaking about transformation from victim to advocate. We'd proven stalkers weren't invincible. Their obsession was weakness to exploit. Their patterns were predictable once understood. Their escalation created evidence of their own crimes. Their refusal to accept reality ensured their own downfall. Jake remained institutionalized, his obsession unchanged but contained. I lived freely, his shadow no longer defining my choices. The network continued growing, helping women worldwide recognize danger and find safety. Justice came not through violence or legal battles, but through community and documentation. My life moved forward while Jake's remained frozen in his obsession with Sophie, a woman who never existed. The handcuffs he'd once used to control me had become his own permanent restraints. The isolation he'd forced on me became his daily reality. The fear he'd weaponized consumed only him now. I found peace in purpose, strength in community, and freedom in the truth that survived his lies. It's so beautiful to see how she turned her pain into purpose and helped so many other women find safety and hope. Jake staying stuck in his obsession while she moves forward and builds this amazing support network really shows how love and community can heal what fear tried to break. The way those handcuffs that once trapped her became his own prison, while she found real freedom through helping others, makes my heart feel so full. Subscribe for more stories.